Hey guys, this is Ashley Kang of ESPN Esports. I'm joined by Atlus, the LCK caster here at Low Park after we finished the final day of the regular split of 2019 summer. Hello. I almost said 안녕하세요 because I'm so used to interviewing Korean players.
I would have known what you meant. I live in Korea. That's fine. It's fine. 안녕하세요.
I guess we were all a bit loopy after that crazy day we just had because it was like the last day of week 10 and even until the very last, all the results mattered. And at the end, Griffin qualified for 2019 Worlds.
Finally we'll get Griffin on the international stage. I know everyone has been looking forward to this team. Of course, MSI, I mean, there were whispers of what scrim results were like with teams like Darwins, teams like Griffin. And I think it's so cool that finally we've got some of the new blood that's going to qualify through. Remember, 2018, it was KT Afrika Gen G. It's like nothing had changed. But now we could have a very, very different world championship.
And Griffin did not just qualify for Worlds, but did it in a very, very convincing manner. Yeah. Especially the game one against LCK Esports, which they just won.
Yeah.
It was back to, 2019's Spring Split, the first round. And it was clean, it was aggressive, they were decisive, they were explosive, and I'm really excited for this team.
I'm excited too. I actually think that the way teams are winning at the moment is almost more important than the results they're actually getting. Because Darwin also, they've had fantastic performances. Like earlier on, we had the Gen G series, and it looked like they were falling into old habits and old problems in game number 2. What old Darwin would have done would tilt off the planet and then lose that series. What this Darwin did, that's moving into the playoffs now in second place, so they'll be playing in the semi-final guaranteed against whoever makes it up the gauntlet. This Darwin looked much better and much cleaner. Canyon especially, man. Having a turnaround performance from looking like one of the worst Sejuanis we've ever seen in game number 2 to having one of the biggest pop-offs on the Silas in game number 3 was really, really impressive, especially for a rookie player that just secured MVP of the split for summer 2019.
And speaking of the way the teams are winning at the moment, I need to talk about Sandbox and SKT because Sandbox was looking to go to the first place in the LCK while SKT was finally trying to qualify for the playoffs. And even though the result means that SKT will start the playoffs at the 4th place and will be playing at the wildcards, their performance also looked quite promising. Back to the old SKT a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the Darwin series was a worry. I could imagine SKT fans wanting to forget that one. Darwin looked absolutely fantastic. Giving Showmaker Akali is a big mistake, so hopefully if they meet each other, then that will be addressed by SKT as far as their draft is concerned. But that matchup against Sandbox, I think, told us more about Sandbox than it did about SKT. Because while we were commentating that game, Papa and I, we were trying to work out what the essence of Sandbox is. What's the hook? Because Sandbox have sort of drifted around the top of the LCK for a long time, right? And in the Spring Split, they were also very competitive despite getting wiped out by Darwin in the playoffs. They still looked very good. But the problem was that we couldn't quite find an identity, right? And I think it reared its head, unfortunately, in that series against SKT, where they just exploded in one of those games. Like, this team is really good until they're absolutely terrible. And I think consistency really needs to come in. And that's why they're hard to define. Because Sandbox fans insist that this team's very good. And Summit's fantastic. Ghost has somehow found himself as far as being one of our top 80 carries. And Dove is sort of secretly a brilliant mid laner. And OnFleek has been very, very aggressive, which fits the meta really beautifully. But unfortunately, sometimes their brains just explode and they can't figure out how to play the game. And you can't have moments like that. Consistency is king. And
speaking of, we talked about how all the teams have had their own up and downs. Like all the teams that we mentioned, SKT, Griffin, Darwin, and Sandbox, hit the first place in the LCK at some point in the summer split. And it's been a very, very competitive summer split, to speak. And all the teams had their low moments. But I find it as a very positive thing because this was a year where LCK was kind of trying to figure out the meta, and through trial and error, I feel like all the teams have improved, especially the top teams. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so. I think Rift Rivals is a great example. We went to Rift Rivals and we actually finally dominated like an LCK team should have, in ages past. It's like ever since 2017, things have been falling apart. And it felt like we found normalcy over at Rift Rivals. Unfortunately, Kingzone going through some struggles, and they're an example of a team that didn't necessarily work out after that point, but everybody else was starting to level up. I think what your question is about is largely about that whole question of, because everything was so close at the top of the LCK, does this mean that we all suck or we're all fantastic? And I think based on the play that we've seen over the last week, and we've been learning for so much of the learning about these LCK teams has been compressed into like week 9 and week 10. And over these 2 weeks, I think we've learned that actually it is that we're good and not that we're not so good in comparison to other regions. So the fact that it was competitive right down to the last, we didn't have any of the silly games that other regions have been having, is I think good, because we need to keep a winning mindset, because there is so much pride on the line for the LCK to finally make it back to the top. It's been too long that we haven't found international success.
It's been since 2017 World Championship, Samsung Galaxy, that we haven't won any international tournament. So even though this is a one-dimensional question, I'm going to ask it. There's one other team that has qualified for Worlds right now, and that is G2 at LEC. Can any of the top teams in the LCK be G2?
Of course, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know like who's going to beat them consistently, right? Like if you put G2 up against SKT back at MSI form, which is the last international representation that we have for both of these teams, does G2 win that best of 5 series every time? I don't think so. That went 5 games. It was super close. So I don't think, if we look at SKT currently, have they improved since MSI? Some people might say no. Some people might say yes. That's sort of like the one thing that we have to sort of adjudicate as to whether we've gotten better or worse. But I like to think that SKT look like they're making it back to that form. Clydsley Sin in their most recent series was an absolute domination machine, much like he was back at MSI, but the rest of the team has been rebuilt around him. I think taking Marta out and putting effort back in means that we've got a little bit of that young talent to the dream team, and I think that only makes things better. So I like to think that LCK has definitely leveled up, and now we've got to find out whether G2 have leveled up, even though they have been by far the most dominant team in their region, which doesn't necessarily promote growth in a team. It can actually be dangerous.
Thank you so much for this interview, and I got to do a quick prediction for you. So we already know that Griffin will be going to Worlds, and I know we have playoffs, we have Gauntlet, but very quickly, give me your 2 other teams that will be going to Worlds in the LCK.
SKT Darwin.
Okay.
That is my prediction.
Prediction. Are you? Okay, let's put a money on that, because that's from Atlus, from the LCK desk, and that was from Lowpark, and I was Ashley Kang, joined by Atlus.